Nobody at Oakridge Estate could have predicted just how electric the annual horse show would feel this year. Not even Laura Bennett. The summer sun hovered above a patchwork of green fields, casting golden rays across rows of painted fences and banners flapping in the breeze. Families clustered together, kids squirming excitedly in their seats, old-timers swapping stories, and food trucks sending up tantalizing clouds of barbecue smoke. But in the center of it all, the arena pulsed with an energy that felt almost alive. Laura sat at the edge of the stands, wheels of her chair nestled into the soft grass. She was 16, with stubborn chestnut hair that fell into her eyes and a quiet fire that refused to go out, no matter what life threw at her. She gripped the armrest, knuckles white, watching riders circle in the ring, their horses prancing and snorting under colorful ribbons in the watchful eyes of the judges. At her side, her mother Hope fussed with a sun hat, one eye always drifting to her daughter. "You sure you're okay out here, Laura?" Hope asked, concern lacing her voice. "Yeah, Mom," Laura murmured, never taking her eyes off the arena. "I just want to watch. For a little while." What Laura didn't say, what she couldn't say, was that she missed being inside that ring more than anything in the world. Once, not so long ago, she'd been a rider, fearless and free, galloping so fast she thought she could outrun any bad thing, until the night of the accident. She remembered the screech of tires, the pain, and the long cold months in the hospital, each one stripping away a little more of her hope. Now, every hoofbeat echoing off the fences felt like an ache in her chest. She pressed her palms together to stop the trembling. Her gaze drifted over the crowd, searching for something she couldn't name. Then the announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeakers, slicing through her reverie. "Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. Please direct your attention to the East Gate for the appearance of the one, the only, Storm." A hush swept across the field. Even the horses in the warm-up pen stilled, ears flicking forward. At first, Laura saw only a blur of movement, a flash of white, a cascade of mane, the shimmer of muscle beneath a gleaming coat. And then Storm exploded into the ring, hooves striking thunder from the earth. He was breathtaking, a stallion the color of snow at midnight, mane wild and eyes fierce, every inch of him a challenge. He threw his head, nostrils flaring, and reared up, the audience gasping as his front legs sliced the air. The handlers clung to his lead ropes, straining to hold him back, but Storm wasn't having it. He twisted, bucked, and with a powerful leap broke free, sending one of the trainers sprawling. "Whoa!" someone shouted. The crowd surged to its feet. Parents pulled children close, cameras flashed, and a few people even ducked behind the railings. Laura's heart hammered in her chest, not from fear, but from a jolt of something primal, as if the stallion's wildness called to a part of her she thought she'd lost. Storm dashed across the arena, his power uncontainable. The announcer's voice was urgent now. "Please remain calm. This is Storm, our featured exhibition horse, untameable and unmatched. No rider has ever managed to break him. We urge everyone to stay seated for your safety." Hope reached for Laura's hand, but Laura didn't notice. She couldn't look away. The world narrowed to the rhythmic pounding of Storm's hooves and the gleam in his eyes. In that instant, Laura remembered what it felt like to ride, how the world faded away, how fear became freedom when you trusted the animal beneath you. As the handlers regrouped, Storm slowed, circling the ring with head high, defiant. He paused near the judge's stand, snorting, sides heaving. Then, as if sensing something or someone, he turned his gaze directly toward Laura. Their eyes met. Time seemed to stop. Everything else, noise, people, even her mother's worried words, faded to silence. It was just Lara and Storm, two beings scarred by life, searching for something neither could name. Storm's ears flicked forward. Lara swallowed, her hands shaking, but she refused to look away. For a heartbeat, the entire arena held its breath. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and ominous, but no one noticed. All eyes were on the girl in the wheelchair and the wild white stallion. "Lara?" Hope whispered, her voice quivering. But Lara didn't answer. Storm took a hesitant step forward, muscles tense, nostrils flaring as if he could smell the difference in her. The crowd watched, rapt, some with phones raised, others frozen in fear or awe. Lara's heart pounded, matching Storm's restless energy. She didn't know what would happen next. If Storm would bolt, if the handlers would regain control, if someone would get hurt. But for the first time in months, she felt truly alive. The announcer's voice cut through the spell. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Our staff are doing everything possible to regain control of the animal." But Lara and Storm stayed locked in their silent moment, an invisible thread stretching between them. Somewhere in the crowd, a child began to cry. A dog barked, but nothing broke the connection. Even the wind seemed to pause, holding its breath. Just then, Storm stamped his hoof, as if issuing a challenge to the world. Lara found herself gripping the armrest so tightly her fingers ached, but she didn't flinch. She couldn't. Not now. For a split second, everything was possible. Hope, fear, longing, and something fierce and wild. All of it pulsed between the scarred girl and the untameable horse. And as the sun dipped behind a bank of clouds, casting the arena in sudden shadow, Lara realized that her story, like Storm's, was far from over. The crowd waited, the silence stretching, everyone wondering what would happen when broken courage met unbroken spirit. The memory of Storm's wild gaze stayed with Lara all night. She barely slept, replaying the moment in the arena over and over, haunted by the unspoken connection. By morning, news of the incident was all over town. Social media buzzed with blurry photos and breathless commentary. Oakridge Estate's legendary stallion, a runaway spectacle, a girl in a wheelchair holding his stare. Even people who hadn't set foot near a horse in years found themselves talking about it in the grocery store, in the school parking lot, at the local diner. But while Oakridge buzzed with gossip and speculation, Lara's world had shrunk to a single thought. What if she could reach Storm? What if, just once, she could show the crowd and herself that she was still more than her injuries? By noon, the second day of the horse show was already in full swing. The air crackled with anticipation and worry. Security was tighter. Handlers whispered and glanced nervously at the stables, where Storm had been sequestered since the night before. Some folks were already calling for the horse to be removed from the grounds. Others argued he should be given another chance. Hope wheeled Lara along the dirt path toward the stables, hoping some fresh air would help distract her daughter. Instead, they found a crowd gathering at the main arena, voices urgent and loud, while Lara's heart skipped as she heard the unmistakable sound of panic. Storm's whinny, high and desperate, echoing from behind the wooden gate. "Mom, let's go see," Lara said, her voice more forceful than she intended. Hope hesitated, her protective instincts battling with Lara's determination. "Sweetie, let's just—" But Lara was already pushing her chair, propelling herself toward the commotion. The closer she got, the clearer the chaos became. Storm was inside the arena again, more agitated than ever, eyes rolling, foam at his mouth. His handlers, two strong men in boots and vests, struggled to hold him back as he twisted and lunged, hooves tearing up the dirt. The crowd gasped, some stepping away from the fence. The announcer's voice was back, sharper this time. "Everyone, please stay clear. We're trying to calm him down. He's never been this riled up before." Someone in the crowd muttered, "That horse is a menace. He's going to hurt someone for real this time." Lara's mother gripped the handles of her wheelchair, trying to pull her back, but Lara braced herself, refusing to budge. "Let me go, Mom," Lara said, low and urgent. "I have to try." "Lara, no! It's too dangerous, please," Hope pleaded, her voice trembling. But Lara shook her head, eyes blazing. For the first time in a long time, she felt something fierce rising inside her. A memory of the fearless girl she'd been before the world turned upside down. She looked directly at the announcer, who was frantically signaling for more help. "Let me try," she called out, surprising herself and everyone else. For a split second, the world seemed to freeze. The handlers paused, unsure. The crowd stared, shock and disbelief passing through them like a wave. And then, like a stone thrown into a pond, ripples of protest and curiosity spread through the arena. "Let the girl try!" someone yelled from the stands, their voice full of hope. "Are you crazy?" another shouted. "She could get hurt!" Lara ignored them all. She pushed her chair forward, rolling across the packed dirt with slow determination. Each bump and jolt sent pain shooting up her arms, but she gritted her teeth and kept going. The handlers exchanged worried glances, then slowly backed away, unsure of what to do. Storm's wild eyes darted toward Lara, his massive body trembling, muscles bunched and ready to flee, or to fight. He pawed the ground, snorting, as if he could smell her fear. The crowd fell silent, the tension almost unbearable. Every eye was on Lara, some full of dread, some full of awe. Hope stood frozen at the fence, hands covering her mouth. Lara's heart pounded, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, remembering every lesson she'd ever learned about horses. Don't show fear. Don't make sudden moves. Speak gently, but with confidence. "Hey, Storm," she said, her voice steady, soft, but clear. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." She inched closer, moving as smoothly as she could in her chair. Storm flared his nostrils, stamping the ground, the whites of his eyes flashing. He snorted, tossing his mane, his body quivering with pent-up energy. The handlers started forward, ready to intervene if needed, but Lara raised a hand, signaling them to stop. "It's just me and you now," she whispered, her eyes never leaving Storm's. She was close enough now to see every line of muscle, every scar, every fleck of sweat on his coat. She could feel his fear as keenly as her own, the way it twisted and burned, the way it made both of them desperate for escape and connection all at once. Slowly, Lara reached out her hand, palm open, letting Storm see she had nothing to hide. For a moment, the stallion hesitated, trembling, as if caught between instinct and curiosity. And then, in a moment that felt like magic, Storm lowered his head. His knees bent, almost as if bowing. The crowd gasped, the sound rolling over the arena like thunder. Lara's hand hovered, then gently touched Storm's muzzle. His breath was hot and damp, his body still tense but yielding to her touch. A current of electricity seemed to run through them both. Lara's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of wonder and gratitude. She stroked his face, murmuring softly, feeling the tremors in his skin. Storm stood perfectly still, letting her touch him, his great body quivering but gentle. The crowd exploded with cheers and applause. Some people wept openly, while others stared in stunned disbelief. Even the announcer was speechless, his voice breaking with emotion. Lara looked up into Storm's eyes, feeling something shift inside her. For the first time since the accident, she didn't feel broken or powerless. She felt whole. As the applause died down, a new question filled the air. Had Lara really connected with Storm, or was this just a lucky moment? Would the trust last, or would it shatter at the first sign of trouble? The handlers exchanged glances, relief and confusion mixing on their faces. Hope rushed forward, tears streaming down her cheeks as she wrapped her arms around her daughter. The world seemed to hold its breath again, the fragile connection between girl and horse hanging in the balance. But Lara didn't let go. She whispered, "You're not alone, Storm. I get it. I'm with you." And somewhere deep inside, Lara knew this was just the beginning. The afternoon after Lara's remarkable encounter with Storm, the Oakridge Estate seemed to pulse with whispers. Stories spread through the crowd and behind the scenes. A girl in a wheelchair had calmed the most dangerous horse at the show. People argued about what it meant. Was it fate? Was it just luck? Some doubted it even happened the way they'd heard. But Lara knew it was real, and deep down, so did Storm. That evening, as the last of the sun spilled golden light across the pastures, Lara wheeled herself along the gravel path to the stables. The sounds of laughter and music from the fairgrounds drifted faintly behind her, but here it was quiet. Just the soft nicker of horses, the earthy scent of hay, and the creak of wooden beams. Her mother, Hope, had insisted on coming along, hovering near the entrance with a mixture of pride and unease. Storm's stall was at the very end, away from the others. He stood with his back to the door, head lowered, tail swishing against the flies. When Lara approached, he turned just slightly, one ear flicking back to listen. "Hey, boy," she said, her voice gentle, almost shy now that it was just the two of them. She rolled closer, careful not to startle him, and watched as Storm's huge body shifted, the muscles rippling under his pale coat. She parked her chair by the open stall door and rested her arms on the lower bar, looking in at him. She wanted to reach out, but something in Storm's posture, so guarded, so tense, made her hesitate. "It's okay if you're scared," Lara whispered. "So am I." She waited, letting the silence stretch. Storm took a deep breath, his ribs expanding and contracting in the fading light. For a while, neither of them moved. Lara found herself thinking about the night everything changed, the sudden screech of brakes, the way her world had spun out of control, the long weeks in the hospital, the ache of being different. She'd lost friends, lost confidence, lost so much she once took for granted. Sometimes it felt like she'd lost her voice, too. She stared at Storm, seeing in him a kind of mirror, both of them marked by invisible wounds, both unsure of their place in the world. "I used to ride every day," she murmured, as much to herself as to the horse. "I loved it. Made me feel like nothing could touch me. After the accident, it's like I'm trapped in here." She tapped her chair. "And everyone's afraid to let me try anything again. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am broken." Storm's ears flicked again. Slowly, he took a step closer, then another, hooves thudding softly on the straw. He lowered his great head, warm breath huffing out, and pressed his nose to the back of Lara's hand where it rested on the stall rail. The touch was so light it nearly broke her heart. She blinked away tears, letting herself just feel the moment. The weight of Storm's trust, the hush of the barn, the knowledge that for once, she wasn't alone. With trembling fingers, Lara reached up and stroked his face, tracing the long line of his jaw, the velvet-soft curve of his muzzle. Storm sighed, his body relaxing, and nudged her gently as if to say, "I'm listening." "You're not so different from me, are you?" Lara whispered. "People think you're dangerous because you're scared. Maybe you're just hurt. Maybe you just need someone to believe in you. She ran her hand along his neck, feeling the strength beneath the scars. Storm leaned into her touch, eyes half closed, and for a moment Lara felt the wall between them melt away. As the evening deepened and the barn lights flickered on, Lara glanced down at Storm's flank. She saw, half hidden beneath his coat, a cluster of pale scars, long and thin, as if from a whip. Her breath caught. She leaned closer, tracing the marks with gentle care. Each scar was a silent story, a memory of pain. The realization hit her hard. Storm wasn't just wild by nature. He'd been made wild by cruelty. A lump rose in Lara's throat. She thought of all the times people looked at her chair and saw only weakness, never the courage it took to keep going. She wondered how many times Storm had been judged by his worst moments instead of the hurt that caused them. She sat in silence, stroking Storm's mane, letting the grief and anger wash through her. She wanted to scream at whoever had hurt him. Instead, she whispered, "I see you, Storm. I promise I won't let anyone hurt you again." Behind her, Hope watched, heart aching for her daughter. She wanted to protect Lara from more disappointment, to shield her from pain, but seeing her now, calm, strong, a quiet leader, she felt a surge of pride. Storm, sensing the shift, gave a soft whinny and lowered his head until it rested lightly on Lara's lap. It was a gesture of absolute trust. Lara smiled through her tears and laid her hand on his forelock, promising silently that she would be his friend, his advocate, whatever it took. For a long time, the two sat in the soft light, sharing a silence that spoke louder than any words. When it was finally time to leave, Lara gave Storm one last pat. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said. "We'll figure this out together." As Hope wheeled her back up the path, Lara glanced over her shoulder. Storm watched her go, eyes calm for the first time in days. In that moment, Lara realized that healing, real healing, didn't come from pretending to be unhurt. It came from telling the truth, from reaching out, from letting yourself be seen. She wasn't sure what would happen next, or whether the world would understand. But she knew one thing: neither she nor Storm would face it alone. Outside, the sky faded from gold to indigo, and the first stars appeared, shimmering over the quiet fields of Oakridge. Somewhere in the distance, music played, and laughter rose. But in the barn, two souls, one human, one horse, had begun the long, brave work of saving each other. The following morning brought with it a restless energy at Oakridge Estate, as if the barns themselves sensed change in the air. Lara woke early, her dreams haunted by images of Storm's scars and the pain hidden behind his eyes. Breakfast was a blur, her mother's gentle encouragement, the clatter of cereal in a bowl, the muted sounds of TV news drifting from the next room. Everyone seemed to be talking about Storm, about the incident in the arena, and about Lara, the miracle girl in the wheelchair. But Lara wasn't interested in gossip or sympathy. She wanted answers. She needed to understand why a horse like Storm, so strong and beautiful, carried wounds that ran deeper than fear. After breakfast, she convinced her mother to take her back to the stables. The air was thick with anticipation. Staff members moved with an edge, casting nervous glances toward Storm's stall. Lara noticed Mr. Grady, one of the older handlers, hovering near the feed shed, his face set in a frown. He'd always given her an odd feeling, too quiet, too rough in his movements around the animals. As Hope stepped inside to talk to a trainer about safety concerns, Lara found herself alone by the side of the barn. She rolled along the shaded path, tracing the familiar route to Storm's stall. but something caught her attention. A sharp crack, like a whip, echoing from behind the tool shed. Her stomach knotted. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was watching, then quietly wheeled herself toward the sound. The shed was half open, sunlight streaming through a dusty window. Inside, among the neatly stacked bales of hay and tack boxes, she saw it, a long, braided whip hanging from a nail. The handle was worn, the leather frayed and stained. Lara stared at it, her heart pounding. The scars on Storm's flank flashed in her mind, aligning too perfectly with the cruel tool before her. She felt a surge of anger, hot, righteous, and unfamiliar. Who would do such a thing? She reached up, struggling a bit, and managed to hook the whip with her fingers, pulling it down to her lap. As she examined it, she heard footsteps approaching. Hope appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Lara, what are you doing?" Hope's voice was soft but tight, worry flickering in her eyes. Lara held up the whip. "Look what I found, Mom." Her voice shook with emotion. Hope's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. The truth hung between them, heavy and ugly. Lara could see the horror and sadness in her mother's eyes, but also something else. Fear. Fear not just for Storm, but for Lara herself. For what might happen if she pushed too hard, if she made enemies among the staff or the town's tight-knit community. "We have to tell someone," Lara said, determination simmering in her voice. "They can't keep hurting him. No wonder he's so scared." Hope hesitated, torn between wanting to protect her daughter and the need to do the right thing. "We need proof, Lara, and we need to be careful. People might not believe us. They might even blame you for getting involved." But Lara's mind was already made up. "I don't care what they think. He needs someone on his side." A short while later, Lara and her mother sat down with Madison Ray, the respected competition judge and unofficial leader of the event's organizing committee. Madison listened quietly as Lara explained what she'd found, her hands folded on the table, her eyes grave. When Lara finished, she placed the whip on the table between them, the silence in the office nearly suffocating. "This is serious," Madison said finally, voice low and steady. "If this is true, it's not just a violation of our rules. It's abuse. I'll have to bring this to the attention of the board and investigate." As the meeting broke up, whispers started swirling. Some handlers eyed Lara with suspicion. Mr. Grady avoided her gaze altogether, slipping out the back of the barn whenever she approached. The atmosphere changed. Where once people saw Lara as a curiosity or a hero, now they saw trouble. Meanwhile, the debate about Storm's fate reached a fever pitch. In the organizers' tent, a heated discussion erupted. Some insisted that Storm was a danger, that his unpredictable outbursts put everyone at risk. Others, emboldened by Lara's story, argued that he was a victim of cruelty, deserving of a second chance. "He's a liability," one official insisted, banging his fist on the table. "If that horse snaps, someone could be seriously hurt. We can't take that risk." "That's not fair," Madison countered, her voice calm but firm. "He's never had a real chance to heal. He needs care and kindness, not punishment." Across the tent, Lara sat quietly, her hands clenched in her lap, listening as adults argued over the future of a horse who'd suffered in silence. She caught snippets: insurance, liability, image, reputation. No one seemed to be asking what was right for Storm. Outside, Hope paced nervously. She was proud of her daughter's courage but frightened by how quickly things were escalating. "Lara, you need to be careful," she warned when they regrouped. "Not everyone wants the truth to come out." "I know, Mom," Lara replied, her voice steady. "But I can't turn my back on him. Not now." As dusk fell over Oakridge, Lara sat alone by Storm's stall, absently braiding a piece of straw while Storm dozed beside her. She felt the weight of the day pressing down, anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. She thought about all the times she'd been underestimated, sidelined, pitied. She thought about Storm's scars and the moments of peace she'd seen in his eyes when he was with her. The world wanted to write both of them off as broken, dangerous, or too much trouble. But Lara refused to accept that. Later that night, as the board met to debate Storm's fate, Lara stared at the moon rising over the dark fields. She whispered a promise to Storm, one she intended to keep, no matter the cost. Whatever happens, I'm not giving up on you. We've both come too far. Inside, the boardroom voices rose and fell, the decision hanging in the air. Would Storm be sent away, forever marked as a lost cause, or would someone finally listen to the truth and give him a chance to heal? The answer would shape not just Storm's future, but Lara's as well. In that moment, with the night pressing close and the world watching, everything felt impossibly fragile, like hope itself was balanced on the edge of a knife. Word spread quickly that an emergency public meeting had been called to address the situation with Storm. By late afternoon, the event barn was packed to overflowing, buzzing with restless energy and divided opinions. Townsfolk, competitors, officials, and reporters crowded into rows of folding chairs, their faces lit with anticipation, worry, and the occasional flash of curiosity. Near the front, Lara waited with hope beside her, Storm's fate weighing on her like a stone. The judge, Madison Ray, stood at the podium, tapping the mic to quiet the noise. "Thank you, everyone, for coming on short notice," she began, her voice steady but urgent. "We're here to discuss the future of Storm, the white stallion at the heart of recent events." Immediately, a flurry of voices rose from the crowd. "He's a menace," someone shouted. "He needs to be put down before he hurts someone." Others muttered in agreement, while several people, mostly young riders and a few parents, defended Storm, pointing out the evidence of his abuse. "Order!" Madison called, raising her hands for silence. "Before we make any decisions, I want everyone to hear from someone who knows Storm best. Lara Bennett, will you come forward?" Lara's heart hammered. Her palms were slick with sweat. She glanced at her mother, who squeezed her shoulder gently. "You've got this, honey." Swallowing hard, Lara wheeled herself up the makeshift ramp to the podium. For a moment, the room spun with noise and faces, then narrowed to just her and the microphone. She took a breath, searching for the right words, words that would make people see Storm the way she saw him. "My name is Lara Bennett," she began, her voice trembling but growing stronger with every word. "Most of you know me as the girl in the wheelchair. But before my accident, I was a rider, just like many of you. Horses were my whole world. After I lost the use of my legs, I thought I'd lost everything that made me who I am. But yesterday, something happened, something that changed me again." The audience leaned forward. Some crossed their arms skeptically. Others watched with open, hopeful faces. "Storm isn't a monster," Lara continued, her voice clear. "He's a victim. The scars on his body aren't from wildness. They're from cruelty. Someone here hurt him again and again until he didn't know who to trust. But yesterday, for a moment, he trusted me. Not because I'm special, but because I know what it's like to be judged by my scars instead of my heart." A ripple of murmurs swept the room. Madison nodded encouragingly. Lara swallowed. "I know Storm is strong, and yes, sometimes he's scared. But I believe with patience and kindness, he can heal. He's helped me remember what it feels like to be brave, to hope again. I'm asking you not to give up on him. Please, let us try." Her voice broke on the last words. The silence that followed was electric. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a middle-aged woman in the back stood up. "My daughter was hurt by a horse once," she said, voice trembling. "But she never gave up on riding. Maybe we shouldn't give up on Storm either." A young man in a blue jacket nodded. "We owe him a chance. And Lara too." Yet not everyone was swayed. Mr. Grady, lurking near the edge of the crowd, shook his head. "It's easy for you to talk about second chances when you're not the one at risk. That horse could kill someone. We can't afford to be sentimental." Another parent chimed in. "What about the safety of our kids? If something goes wrong, who takes responsibility?" Arguments erupted, voices overlapping, fear clashing with hope, skepticism with empathy. For a moment, it seemed as if the meeting might spiral out of control, but Madison raised her hand again, her calm authority slicing through the noise. "We hear your concerns," she said, "and no one wants to see anyone get hurt. But we also believe in redemption and in the power of trust. Here's my proposal. Lara will be given one chance to work with Storm under strict supervision. If she can demonstrate progress, if she can show us Storm can be managed safely, he'll be allowed to stay." A heavy pause filled the air. Lara's heart leapt, mingling hope with anxiety. Then Madison looked straight at her, her gaze kind but firm. "Lara, do you accept these terms?" Lara nodded, her voice steady. "I do. I won't let you down." The room buzzed with new energy. Some cheered, others remained stiffly silent, but the decision had been made. After the meeting, as people dispersed in tight, whispering clusters, a few approached Lara to offer encouragement. "You're braver than most adults here," a teenage boy said, flashing her a thumbs up. An elderly man with a cane gave her a nod. "Don't listen to the ones who doubt. Sometimes all it takes is one person to make a difference." But not everyone was supportive. Mr. Grady lingered near the exit, giving her a dark look before slipping away. The threat in his eyes lingered long after he was gone. Later that night, Lara sat outside Storm's stall, hope at her side. The barn was quiet, the world settling into dusk. Lara let her thoughts drift, feeling the pressure of the task ahead. If she failed, Storm would be sent away forever, maybe worse. But if she succeeded, everything could change. Her mother tucked a stray hair behind Lara's ear. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "No matter what happens, you stood up for what's right." Lara smiled, a little shaky but genuine. "Thanks, Mom. I just hope it's enough." Inside the stall, Storm lifted his head, sensing Lara's presence. She reached through the bars, stroking his muzzle. "We get one shot, Storm. One chance to prove we belong." The horse nudged her hand, as if accepting the challenge. That night, sleep came slowly to Lara. Her mind replayed the arguments, the faces, the weight of so many hopes and fears hanging on her shoulders. She made a silent vow. She would do everything in her power to help Storm heal, to show the world that broken things could be made whole. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But for now, under the hush of the barn and the vast sweep of stars above, Lara allowed herself a moment of hope, a fragile, shining thing, as bright and wild as the stallion waiting in the darkness. The next morning dawned over Oakridge Estate clear and bright, but Lara felt as though she carried a storm inside her. She lay awake long before sunrise, listening to the distant nickers and snorts from the barns, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. The weight of the town's hope and its skepticism seemed to press down on her chest. There was no turning back now. After breakfast, Lara rolled herself to the stables with Hope at her side. The barn felt different. People paused in their chores, watching her with open curiosity or quiet judgment. Some nodded encouragement. Others simply stared. Even Storm seemed to sense the shift. When Lara approached his stall, he tossed his head and pawed the ground, snorting restlessly. "Morning, boy," Lara said softly, reaching through the bars to stroke his muzzle. She could feel his tension, a living thing between them. Madison met them by the paddock gate, clipboard in hand. "We'll keep everything supervised," she assured Lara and her mother. "You don't have to prove anything in a day. Just take it slow." Lara nodded, determined to hide her own doubts. Still, as she watched Storm's anxious pacing, she felt a pang of uncertainty. What if the trust between them was only a fluke? What if she let him, or everyone, down? With Madison's help, they led Storm to a smaller training ring behind the main arena. The space was enclosed and quieter, away from the gathering crowd. Lara wheeled herself to the center and waited while Hope and Madison hung back near the fence. Storm circled restlessly, his ears pinned, muscles quivering at every sound. A distant truck backfired, and he spooked, rearing and dancing away from Lara's outstretched hand. "It's okay," Lara murmured, steadying her breath. "You're safe. I promise." For long minutes, Lara just sat in silence, letting Storm acclimate to her presence, her stillness, her scent. She remembered the first time she rode a difficult horse as a child, how her trainer told her that patience could speak louder than any whip. She let her calm seep out, making herself as small and gentle as she could. After a while, Storm's panic softened to wary curiosity. He crept closer, nostrils flaring, blowing warm breath over Lara's fingers. She smiled, resisting the urge to move too quickly. "Good boy," she whispered. "See? Nothing to be afraid of." They began with small steps, first just standing together. Then Lara gently touched his flank, running her hand over the old scars, as if to reassure him that pain was in the past. Storm's eyes closed for a moment, and he leaned into her hand. Progress came in fits and starts. Some days Storm was calm and responsive, letting Lara groom him, walking beside her as she wheeled around the ring, even accepting a halter without fuss. But other days, the old fears resurfaced. A clanging bucket or a shouted voice would send him trembling and wild-eyed, jerking away from her touch. Lara's frustration grew. Each setback felt personal, as if her own limitations were holding them both back. More than once, she burst into tears when alone in her room at night, plagued by doubts she couldn't voice in daylight. She began to question herself. Was she really strong enough? Was she just chasing a dream everyone else knew was impossible? Yet every morning she returned to Storm. Together they worked through lunging exercises, target training, and simple commands. Lara spoke in gentle tones, rewarding Storm's efforts with apple slices and praise. Sometimes when Storm allowed her to slip a rope over his neck or followed her with soft, trusting eyes, Lara felt the world was shifting back into color. Hope watched her daughter with mingled pride and anxiety. She saw the toll the training took. Lara's exhausted slouch at dinner, the strain in her arms, the way she rubbed at aching wrists after hours of maneuvering her chair. But she also saw something else. Lara's old spark, the glint of determination that had always marked her as different, special. "You don't have to do this alone, sweetheart," Hope told her one evening, massaging her shoulders after a particularly rough session. "If it gets to be too much, if you want to stop, you just say the word." Lara shook her head, stubborn as ever. "I can't stop, Mom. Not after everything. Not after what Storm's been through. The days blurred together in a routine of hope and struggle. The town buzzed with rumors. Some marveled at Lara's courage. Others waited for her to fail. Mr. Grady watched from a distance, his face unreadable. The night before the demonstration, a violent thunderstorm rolled through Oakridge, rattling windows and shaking the barns. Lara barely slept, her mind churning with fear. What if Storm panicked tomorrow? What if all their work was for nothing? At dawn, Hope found Lara sitting outside Storm's stall, talking to him in a low, soothing voice. "I'm scared, Storm," Lara admitted, her hands trembling. "But we have to try, for both of us." Storm nudged her shoulder, as if sensing her anxiety. Lara stroked his mane, drawing strength from the animal who, in many ways, had become her mirror. When Madison arrived to check on them, she found Hope and Lara ready, nervous, yes, but resolute. "The judges want to see progress," Madison explained gently. "Just show them what you two have built. It doesn't have to be perfect." Lara nodded. "We'll do our best." As the sun climbed, the pressure in Lara's chest grew almost unbearable. The training ring was already filling with spectators, eager to see if the impossible might happen after all. She squeezed her mother's hand before wheeling herself into the arena. Hope held back tears, whispering a silent prayer for courage. Lara positioned herself at the center of the ring. Storm stood at her side, trembling but alert. The world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, the girl who refused to give up, and the horse who needed someone to believe. In that moment, Lara realized she wasn't alone after all. She had Storm, she had her mother, and for the first time since the accident, she had herself. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. Today, they would face it, together. Sunlight slanted across the Oakridge Estate as the crowds gathered for what felt like the most important moment of the entire horse show. Word had spread beyond the town. Local TV crews arrived, reporters snapped photos, and people who'd never cared about horses before lined up along the rails. It wasn't just about a wild stallion or a girl in a wheelchair anymore. It was about hope, about proving something to everyone, including themselves. Lara felt the weight of 100 eyes as she waited with Storm just outside the main arena. Her hands were slick with sweat, and her heart thundered so loud she was sure Storm could hear it. He paced beside her, tossing his mane, muscles bunching beneath his shining white coat. Even with weeks of training, he still startled at new sounds. The shrill cry of a child, the creak of the announcer's microphone, a dog barking in the distance. Madison Ray appeared at Lara's side, clipboard in hand, her face a mask of calm, but her eyes encouraging. "You ready, Lara?" Lara nodded, even though her voice quivered inside her. "We're ready. We have to be." Hope gave her daughter's shoulder a squeeze. "You've got this, baby, no matter what happens." A hush fell over the crowd as the gates swung open and the announcer's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, for today's demonstration, please welcome Lara Bennett and Storm." The crowd erupted with applause and murmurs. Lara took a deep breath, whispered to Storm, "Let's show them what we can do," and wheeled herself forward onto the arena's packed earth. For a moment, she and Storm were utterly alone in the center of a sea of faces. A tricky obstacle course had been set up. Bright cones, barrels, colorful flags, and at the far end, a ring of fire set safely in metal pans. A dramatic flourish, but a real test of any horse's trust and courage. Storm snorted, nostrils flaring. Clearly nervous at the crowd and the unfamiliar obstacles, Lara could feel his anxiety, every muscle twitch, the urge to bolt. The first part of the course was a simple weave through cones. She spoke softly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Easy, boy. We're just walking." With halter and lead rope in her hand, Lara guided Storm as she rolled forward, weaving her chair through the cones. Storm hesitated, but Lara's patience and gentle words drew him along. The crowd murmured as he followed, not flawlessly, but with a surprising willingness. A cheer went up when he finished the section without bolting. Next were the barrels. Lara paused, let Storm sniff each one, then encouraged him to circle around them. He flinched at a sudden shout from the stands, but, instead of bolting, turned back to Lara for reassurance. She stroked his neck, feeling his fear, and whispered, "You're doing great, Storm. I'm right here." By the third obstacle, bright flags snapping in the breeze, Storm balked, backing up and stamping the ground. Lara fought panic. She knew a single wrong move could end everything. The judges watched, their faces unreadable. She remembered the first day after her accident when she'd been terrified just to go outside, certain everyone would stare. She remembered how her mother had knelt beside her and said, "You don't have to be perfect, just brave." So Lara spoke softly, rhythmically, matching her words to the beat of Storm's breathing. Gradually, Storm's trembling eased. He touched a flag with his nose, then followed Lara around the markers. Each step felt like a victory. The crowd applauded, some standing to see better. Madison gave her a small, proud smile from the judges' table. Hope wiped away tears, barely daring to breathe. Then came the final test, the ring of fire. Even from a distance, Lara could see Storm's fear. His ears pinned back, his legs stiffened, and sweat darkened his coat. The crowd sensed it too, the tension palpable. Phones were raised, everyone holding their breath. Lara positioned herself a safe distance away. "You don't have to do this if you're too scared," she whispered. But Storm looked at her, eyes wide, and she felt the old magic, a silent, wordless trust that ran deeper than fear. The flames crackled and hissed. Lara spoke softly, urging him forward. "I'm here, Storm. You're not alone. Trust me." He hesitated, sides heaving, then took a trembling step toward the fire. A gasp rippled through the crowd. A handler nearby shifted nervously, ready to intervene. But Storm didn't bolt. He paused at the edge of the flames, eyes locked on Lara. She held out her hand, tears blurring her vision. "It's okay. We're together." In a burst of courage, Storm stepped forward, passing through the ring of fire with Lara rolling at his side. The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, shouts of disbelief. Some people wept openly. Others hugged their children. The moment was electric. Lara wiped her eyes and hugged Storm's neck. For a moment, everything else faded. The pain, the fear, the doubts. All that remained was trust. The judges huddled, whispering and debating. Madison approached the microphone. "We've never seen anything like that in all my years here," she said, voice trembling with emotion. "Lara Bennett and Storm have demonstrated not only progress, but a bond of trust that inspires us all." A cheer rolled across the field. Lara smiled, exhausted and overwhelmed, but radiant with joy. Hope rushed to her side, arms open wide. "You did it! You really did it!" Storm lowered his head to Lara's lap, letting her stroke his face while the crowd watched, utterly spellbound. But amid the celebration, there was still uncertainty. The judges announced their decision. Lara and Storm would be allowed to compete in the main competition, under close supervision. The stakes had never been higher. Lara knew that next time, everything would be on the line. Not just for her and Storm, but for everyone who needed proof that courage could overcome fear. As the arena cleared and the sun set behind the barns, Lara sat quietly with Storm, feeling the exhaustion settle in. For the first time, she let herself believe they just might make it. Storm nuzzled her gently, eyes calm and bright. Lara laughed through her tears. "We're not finished yet, are we?" she whispered. "Not by a long shot." That night, Oakridge buzzed with talk of miracles, bravery, and the strange magic that could happen when you refused to give up. But for Lara and Storm, it was just the beginning. The morning of the final competition dawned bright and unseasonably warm, the kind of day that felt destined for something extraordinary. Oakridge Estate was alive with energy. Children running along white fences, families setting up folding chairs, competitors brushing horses to a polished gleam. Banners snapped in the breeze. Word had traveled fast about Lara and Storm. More people filled the grounds than ever before. TV vans lined the outer road, and a local radio host set up a booth near the main gate, promising live updates every hour. Inside the barn, Lara's stomach was in knots. She sat quietly beside Storm, brushing his mane, each stroke slow and methodical, both to calm herself and the stallion. Storm shifted restlessly, picking up on the tension in the air. But there was a softness in his eyes now, a trust that hadn't been there before. Hope entered with a gentle smile, carrying a good luck charm from one of the younger riders, a blue ribbon with a tiny horseshoe attached. "You ready, sweetie?" Hope asked, kneeling beside her. Lara forced a smile. "As I'll ever be. We've worked so hard for this." Hope squeezed her hand. "No matter what happens out there, I am so proud of you, and Storm." The call came over the loudspeakers. "All competitors for the grand finale, please report to the arena. Order of go will be posted at the in-gate." It was time. Lara and Hope wheeled out into the sunshine, Storm trotting by her side. The crowd parted as they moved toward the main arena. Some people clapped, some whispered, others just watched with wide eyes, uncertain what to expect. Backstage, elite riders waited with immaculate horses, glossy bays, high-stepping palominos, nervous chestnuts. Some looked at Lara and Storm with skepticism, others with open hostility. "I can't believe they're letting her compete," one girl whispered to a friend, flicking her hair over a sequin jacket. "It's just for show." Lara ignored the murmurs, focusing on Storm, who tossed his head as if to say, "Let them talk." Madison Ray found them near the gate, clipboard in hand. "You're up third. The course is tough, but just do what you've practiced. Don't try to impress anyone. Just trust each other." Lara nodded, her nerves jangling. "We'll do our best." The first two competitors went before her, a tall boy in English riding boots and a girl with a dappled gray mare. They zipped through the course, clearing jumps and weaving around barrels to polite applause. Then came Lara's turn. The announcer's voice rang out, rich with anticipation. "Next up, Lara Bennett and Storm. Let's give them a big Oakridge welcome." A surge of applause and a few scattered cheers rippled through the stands. Lara took a deep breath, then wheeled herself and Storm into the arena. It was dazzling. The flags, the banners, the sea of faces, the judges' table at the far end, Madison watching intently. The course looked huge from down low in her chair, but Lara had mapped every inch of it in her mind. The tight turns, the high jump, the flowered obstacle, and, as a final flourish, a set of balloons to burst with a stick held in her hand. She started slow, leading Storm through the first gate, her voice calm and steady. He followed, alert and eager, his trust in her obvious to the crowd. They weaved around barrels, executed tight circles, and made it through the first jump, lowered for safety, but still an impressive feat for a horse with such a troubled past. Then, halfway through their routine, disaster struck. As they approached the flowered obstacle, a gust of wind blew through the arena, sending a cluster of balloons slamming into the fence with a loud, startling pop. The noise was sharp and unexpected, echoing off the grandstands. Storm jolted, eyes wide, muscles rigid. He whirled, sides heaving, caught in panic. The crowd gasped. Someone shouted for the handlers. For a split second, time seemed to stop. All the trust they had built, all their hard work, teetered on the edge. Lara's mind raced back to the hospital. Bright lights, beeping monitors, the overwhelming urge to run when there was nowhere to go. She knew what it felt like to lose control, to want to bolt. She closed her eyes, let herself feel the fear, and then pushed through it. "It's okay, Storm," she whispered, voice trembling but sure. "I'm right here, breathe. Listen to my voice." She kept speaking softly, never raising her tone, never yanking the lead. Slowly, Storm's breathing eased. His eyes flicked to Lara, searching for reassurance. She touched his shoulder, grounding both of them. She felt every set of eyes in the arena on her, some waiting for her to fail, others silently willing her to succeed. The silence stretched. Then, to the amazement of everyone, Storm lowered his head and nudged Lara's shoulder, as if apologizing. The crowd exhaled as one. "Let's finish this," Lara whispered, smiling through tears. She guided Storm back to the course, picking up where they left off. Each step was harder now. Her arms ached, her heart raced, but she refused to quit. At the high jump, Lara steeled herself. "Ready?" she asked Storm. He snorted, as if to say, "Always." She gave the command, and Storm surged forward, clearing the jump with powerful grace. The crowd gasped, then erupted in cheers. Lara barely heard them. She was focused on Storm, on the partnership that had become her lifeline. The final challenge loomed, the balloon pop. Lara took the stick, hands shaking, and wheeled toward the cluster. Storm danced nervously but stayed by her side. With one swing, Lara popped the balloons. This time, Storm flinched but didn't bolt. He looked at her, and she grinned, the two of them triumphant. The arena exploded in a standing ovation. People were on their feet, cheering, clapping, some even crying. Madison beamed from the judges' table. Hope ran onto the field, sweeping Lara into a fierce hug. "You did it!" Hope shouted above the roar. Lara reached out, wrapping her arms around Storm's neck, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered. "Together." For a moment, nothing else mattered. Not the doubts, not the past, not the judgment of others. All that existed was the bond they had forged, tested and proven in the most public, unforgiving spotlight. Madison approached the microphone, her voice filled with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed here is more than horsemanship. It's a lesson in trust, in courage, and in the healing power of connection." The applause was deafening. That night, as the sun set behind the fields and the last of the visitors drifted away, Lara sat beside Storm in the quiet barn. She stroked his mane, replaying every second of their performance in her mind. "We showed them, didn't we?" she whispered. Storm nuzzled her shoulder in answer, content and at peace. For the first time since her accident, Lara felt not just whole, but limitless. The competition was over, but the energy lingered in the air, like distant thunder after a storm. The crowd had long since dispersed, the banners were being rolled up, and the last of the TV vans drove off into the darkness. Yet Lara stayed at the Oakridge Estate, sitting quietly with Storm beneath the vast, starlit sky. It was one of those rare moments when the world felt perfectly still, where time seemed to slow down and every breath carried a sense of meaning. Storm grazed nearby, his white coat glowing under the moonlight. Lara ran her hands over his mane, feeling the texture, the warmth, and the quiet heartbeat beneath the surface. She found herself thinking not about the cheers or the applause or even the victory itself, but about every moment that had led to this night. The pain, the struggle, the lonely days when hope seemed out of reach. She spoke softly, her voice carrying in the night air. "You know, Storm, I used to think healing meant going back to the way things were before, but I don't think that's true anymore. Maybe healing is about finding something new, even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared." Storm shifted, pressing his head gently into her shoulder, as if he understood. Lara smiled, tears blurring her vision. She thought of her accident, the long days in the hospital, the way she'd felt when everyone seemed to look at her differently, as if she were broken, fragile, destined to be left behind. She had tried so hard to be brave, to hide her fear, but it wasn't until she let herself feel it, let herself be vulnerable, that things began to change. She stroked Storm's nose, her words for both of them. "I was so angry for so long. I felt powerless. But when I looked at you, I saw someone who was hurting too. Someone who needed a friend, not a judge. We both needed someone to believe in us, even when it didn't make sense to anyone else." The air was cool, filled with the scent of grass and earth. Hope soon joined them, settling quietly beside Lara, her presence warm and steady. For a while they sat together in silence, the unspoken love between mother and daughter stronger than words. Hope finally spoke, her voice gentle. "You did something incredible, Lara. Not just for Storm, but for everyone who watched you out there. You reminded them that we all have scars. It's what we do with them that matters." Lara leaned into her mother's embrace, letting herself rest for the first time in days. She closed her eyes, feeling Storm's breath and the reassuring weight of Hope's arm around her. It was in these quiet moments that she understood how far she had come. Not in distance, but in courage. Later, as the moon rose higher, Madison Ray appeared, carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa and a proud, grateful smile. She joined them by the fence, watching Storm graze. "You know, Lara," Madison said, "your story is going to change things around here. Watching you and Storm reminded everyone that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about standing up, again and again, even when the world doubts you." Lara blushed, looking down. "I just did what I had to do. He needed someone. I guess I did too." Madison sipped her cocoa. "Most people spend their lives waiting for someone else to take the first step. You didn't wait. You showed us what's possible when we lead with empathy and trust." They spoke for a while about what the journey had meant, the lessons that would outlast any trophy. Lara realized that true healing, whether for a person or an animal, wasn't about erasing the past. It was about facing pain, reaching out, and allowing trust to grow in the spaces where fear once lived. She thought of the others she'd met during her recovery, the children at therapy who had given up hope, the parents who feared for their futures, the horses in the barn whose stories had never been told. She wondered how many were still waiting for someone to reach out, to see past the scars and believe in second chances. As dawn crept along the horizon, Madison shared her own plans, inspired by Lara's journey. "I want to start a program here, pairing horses like Storm with kids who face challenges like you have. There's something powerful about that bond. It can change lives." Lara's heart swelled with hope. "That would be amazing. Nobody should have to feel alone, Madison. Not people, not horses." Hope nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "You'd be perfect to help with something like that, Lara. You understand what it means to fight for hope. In that quiet hour, they sketched dreams for the future, a place where the untameable and the overlooked would find acceptance, where healing would begin not with perfection, but with understanding. As the sun peaked above the treetops, painting the estate in gold, Lara found herself reflecting on what she would tell others about this journey. She thought of the many lessons the arena had taught her. Asterisk. True courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about letting others see your fears and still choosing to show up. Asterisk. Healing happens when we reach out to others, even when we're hurting ourselves. Asterisk. Sometimes the things that break us open the door to helping someone else. Asterisk. Trust, hard-won and sometimes fragile, is the foundation of every new beginning. Asterisk. When one voice speaks out, others will follow. Change can start with just one act of kindness, one hand offered in friendship. Lara looked at Storm, grazing peacefully, and saw not a wild animal or a victim, but a survivor. Like her, he'd been shaped by hardship, but not defined by it. Together, they had written a new chapter, one built on patience, persistence, and a willingness to try again, no matter how many times life said no. As the day brightened and Oakridge Estate came to life, Lara knew this was just the beginning. With Storm and her mother by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Somewhere, a child who had watched her ride today might believe that anything is possible. Somewhere, another horse might find gentle hands and a second chance. And somewhere deep inside, the wounds that once seemed insurmountable were slowly, quietly healing, transformed by love, trust, and the unbreakable courage of never giving up. Months had passed since the summer when Lara Bennett and the wild white stallion changed Oakridge forever. Now autumn was settling gently over the estate, painting the pastures in gold and copper, crisp leaves swirling on the breeze. There was a new feeling in the air, not just change but hope, as if every paddock and barn and quiet meadow remembered what had happened that season. Lara was wheeling herself along a familiar path, Storm's steady footsteps beside her, the morning sun dappling through oak branches overhead. The estate looked different now. Kids' voices echoed from the therapy paddock, and laughter drifted from the barn where new volunteers cleaned stalls and brushed horses. It was a place alive with second chances. Today, Lara wore a staff badge at her collar, not as a guest, but as an equine therapy volunteer. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she guided children and teens, some nervous, some angry, some shy, through their first hesitant touches with the horses. Some, like her, used wheelchairs or leg braces. Others wore scars you couldn't see at all. Storm had become the gentle anchor of the program. No longer a legend of danger, he grazed quietly nearby as kids fed him apples, brushed his mane, or just sat in the grass, whispering secrets. He would turn his head and nuzzle a trembling hand, patient and wise, his own pain transformed into something soft and strong. One afternoon, Lara led a session for a group of new arrivals. She wheeled up beside a boy named Mason, whose arm trembled with every movement. He refused to meet anyone's gaze, shoulders hunched with old disappointment. Lara smiled, remembering her own first days back at the barn. Storm used to be scared too, she told Mason, handing him a carrot. People said he was too wild to trust, but he proved them wrong. Mason looked at her, doubt flickering in his eyes. How'd you make him trust you? I didn't make him, Lara said. We learned together. I showed him I wouldn't hurt him, even when he was afraid. He gave me a chance, and I gave him one right back. Slowly, Mason reached out, letting Storm's soft muzzle brush his hand. Storm took the carrot gently, his eyes warm and curious. Mason's face broke into a shy grin, the first Lara had seen from him. You did it, she said softly. He trusts you. After each session, Lara and the kids would gather in the meadow beneath a great oak. Storm would graze nearby, never far from the group. Lara would encourage them to share their stories, their fears, their victories, no matter how small. For many, the barn became a refuge, a place where limitations fell away, and courage was measured not in perfection, but in persistence. On a crisp Saturday, the estate held its annual fall festival. The therapy program was now a featured attraction. Parents, town officials, and visitors toured the grounds, marveling at the change in both the horses and the children. Madison Ray gave tours, explaining how the program paired rescued horses with kids facing challenges, teaching both about trust and healing. When the time came for the keynote speech, Madison called Lara up to the small stage set in front of the barn. A hush fell as she rolled into the sunlight, Storm grazing just behind her. Lara paused, searching for the right words. She looked out over the crowd. Kids and parents, staff and judges, people who had once doubted her and had gathered to hear her story. Most of you know me as the girl who tamed Storm, Lara began, her voice clear and steady. But really, Storm and I saved each other. When I met him, I thought my story was over. I'd lost everything I loved, and I didn't know who I was anymore. But he showed me that even when you're scared, even when you're broken, you can still find a way to heal. You can still trust again. She looked at the children gathered on the grass, some of them holding their horses' leads, others listening with shining eyes. Trust is scary. It means letting someone see the wildest, most hurt part of you. But when you take that risk, amazing things can happen. Storm taught me that our greatest weaknesses, the things that make us different, can become our greatest strengths, if we're brave enough to let hope lead the way. She paused, tears bright in her eyes. So I want to say this. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on others, even when everyone says it's impossible. One act of kindness, one hand reaching out, can change a life. It changed mine. It changed Storm's. And now, it's changing Oakridge. The crowd erupted into applause, some people standing, others wiping their eyes. Hope ran up to embrace Lara, her pride plain for all to see. After the speech, parents stopped Lara to thank her. Kids lined up to stroke Storm's mane. Madison clasped her hand and whispered, "You started something here, Lara. You showed us all what real courage looks like." Later, as dusk painted the fields with lavender and gold, Lara sat quietly in the meadow with Storm. She watched as children played and horses grazed. In the gentle hush, she let herself savor the peace that had been so hard won. She thought about the journey, the pain, the loneliness, the stubborn hope that refused to die. She remembered the first time Storm had trusted her, the day the arena fell silent, the applause after their final performance, the relief and wonder in her mother's eyes. And she realized that their story had become something larger than either of them. A legacy passed on to every child, every horse, every doubter who now believed that transformation was possible. Before leaving for the night, Lara wheeled up beside Storm and laid her cheek against his strong, warm neck. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me, for showing me I could trust myself." Storm turned, breathing softly into her hair. Around them, the world seemed to glow with promise. The promise that healing is possible, that second chances are real, and that hope, once planted, can grow into something strong enough to change a whole community. As the stars blinked awake overhead, Lara glanced back at the barn, at the children and families and horses woven together by their shared journey. She knew there would always be challenges ahead, setbacks, doubts, hard days, but she also knew she'd never face them alone. And so, under the endless sky, Lara and Storm moved forward together, symbols of resilience, courage, and the enduring magic of second chances. Theirs was a story that would be told again and again, inspiring those who heard it to reach out, to trust, and to never give up. Because in the end, the wildest storms could be tamed, not with force, but with patience, love, and the simple, unshakable belief that everyone deserves a chance to heal.